Hello. Oh dear. It was cute earlier. Now I'm not sure. It was cute. It was cute before. Hello. Hello. Just getting started. I am going to have to actually get more whiskey at some point. I clearly did not realize how long I was going to be in quarantine. So, hi. How is everybody? Just getting set for my interview tonight. This fringe, as you can see, has gone to a side. It has become something. I only ever drink this whiskey when I'm doing this show, so I'm gonna actually have to get more of it, I think. This is not the only whiskey that I drink. I definitely drink other whiskey. It's just, this is the one that apparently I have reserved for this show. Also, thank you. Oh, somebody stopped reading Vicious for this. Oh no, hopefully you weren't at a good part. I don't know what to do with this. Should I tuck it behind my ear? I don't know. Why do I accept no friend requests is only because I get a lot of them and I don't know how to vet anything and I don't spend very much time on Facebook. So if you want to chat with me, here and Instagram and Twitter are really the best places to do it. So we're just waiting for Tessa, my lovely guest tonight. And in the meantime, hello. Let me know where you are. Let me know what you're up to. And then we will get started. Just prepping, obviously. Just keeping it as professional as possible. Out of all your books, do you have a favorite? I don't have favorite children. I try really hard not to have favorite children. I don't know. This is making me feel a little mumsy. Hold on. You just woke up. Hold on. I'm trying to make sure I keep an eye on this down here so that when Tess gets here, I can let her into the hosting place. Savannah, France. Hi, France. That's where I am. Trying to cure yourself from writer's block. Honestly, I just try and figure out why I have writer's block. Is it fear? Is it boredom? Do I not know what happens next? Am I scared to write it? I think if you can break down why you have writer's block, it helps you figure out what to do about it. All right, let's see. I'm good. It's been a very long week. I have a lot of work on my plate, and I am just trying to take it one day at a time. Yes, this is my Oban Whiskey Saturday. Thank you for joining me. I'm going to have to actually get a different kind of whiskey, so we'll see what I come up with next. Well, anyway, tonight's guest is Tessa Gratton. I'm very, very excited to talk to her. What I like is that every week, if you've tuned in, you'll notice every week has a super different feel. And that's because my relationship to each of these authors is really different. And so I just kind of try and go with the vibe of the week and the vibe of that particular interaction. You can tell when I've known somebody a really long time. And other times I've tried to incorporate authors that I really love as people, and I want to make sure that you find out more about their books as well. So I try to balance it. You'll notice in the upcoming weeks I have some really big, exciting names, and I have some names that I hope you'll find big and exciting because I want you to get to know their work as well. I'm trying to balance out the big known names and the names that I would like you to know more. Yes, let's see. Where is Tess? If you were Tess, where would you be? Where would you be? We're waiting on Tessa. I'm sure. Okay, so yes, I have a lot of tattoos. My favorites, though, are my birds. Oh, there. Okay, hold on. Tess, I've got you. Don't worry. I've caught you. Tess. I'm going to find you. This is the technology. Tess. Everybody, hang on for just a second as I rope Tessa in to do this with me. This is how technology does not always work with us. Tess, you might need to exit the chat and come back in, and it should prompt you because I am not wise in the ways of this system, if that makes sense. So Tessa, if you're there, try leaving and coming back. And then as you join the chat, it should allow me to make you a host. We're going to figure this out together. We're always figuring it out as we go along because I am not a professional, as we have discovered. All right, yes. People are saying when you come back in, so let's see. I just like to remind everybody that this isn't my job, and thus I am not a professional. So anytime anything goes wrong, you can just remember, this is not what I do. This is not what I'm meant to do for a living. This is just a way that we are killing time during the apocalypse. So we're just waiting for Tess to exit the room and come back in. There we go, let's see. Nope. Come on, Tess. You can do it. We're just waiting. Just remember, I don't know what I'm doing. Tess doesn't know what she's doing. None of us know what we're doing. We're not meant to know what we're doing. We're just meant to be doing our best along the way. So that's what we're doing here tonight. I'm sorry for the ramble. It's been a very long week, and I'm trying to keep my focus on the chat windows in case Tessa can't figure out what... There we go. Ha 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 ha. Got you. I love it when it works out. It's gonna work. It's gonna work. It's gonna work. Tessa!
Hi!
Hi!
I had to switch to my phone. I was trying to do it on my computer.
Oh yeah, no, it's never gonna let you be that cool. Like, it's technology. Technology hates us and everything about us. How are you?
Okay. That's fine?
Yeah, you look perfect. You look perfect.
Awesome.
You look wonderful. The hair looks amazing.
Oh, well, that's a miracle.
Yeah, so I understand. Honestly, I had bangs when this all started. Like, I had a proper fringe that was like to here, and now it's this thing that hangs on the side of my head, so.
I had a really short, dapper cut.
Yeah.
And sorry, I'm disappearing again. But it's, you know, it was exactly the kind of haircut that needs a lot of maintenance, of course. So, oh, this is ridiculous.
You might just want to hold it.
No. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll do that.
Yeah. It should be very chill. Mine is currently balanced on multiple puzzles with like a piece of like paper shoved under one corner.
I'm just going to grab a bunch of these books.
Yeah. Just use the
desk.
books. That's what the books are for.
Pile them up. Yes. They're props. Books
I love
are
it.
props.
I love it.
Okay.
There you are.
That'll
Perfect.
be good.
Perfect. What are you? Do you have an alcohol?
I do. I have Jameson on the rocks with a twist.
Perfect. Perfect. I almost broke my no ice rule because I had this really badass like skull ice cubes, and if I would have broken it for anyone, I would have broken it for you. But this is like a really nice whiskey, and I couldn't bring myself to do it. So I want you to know, in my heart, there's a little skull ice cube in there.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. So how are you? How are you doing in the apocalypse?
I'm doing surprisingly well. I'm a natural, don't leave the house kind of person. So my day-to-day life is fairly usual. It's just when those like external things start encroaching, or I, miss my dad.
Yeah.
It gets really rough, but yeah.
It's easy to forget for tiny windows of time. Like tiny windows, and I'll just go about my work day, and then I'll have a moment where I'm like, oh shit.
Yeah.
Nothing is normal. I'm like being very reminded of it right now as we try to prep for Abby stuff, and nothing works the way it was supposed to. And so you're just kind of trying to be flexible.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's a good productive window, weirdly. It's good for working. It's terrible for anything else.
Yeah, I think that's really true. I've been remarkably productive.
Yeah.
Partly, I think, because there's nothing else I can do.
Exactly.
And so it's either be productive or stress out. And sometimes stressing out wins, and you just are, anxious all day or can't work. But that is something that I actually got pretty good at. I'm taking it serious all of a sudden. When my mom was sick. I got really good at carving time to really freak out. And that helped me carve out time to maintain like creativity when everything around me, my whole world felt like it was getting smaller and smaller. And I think that's kind of what most people are experiencing right now, is that the shrinking of the world to really specific, you know, moments and possibilities. And so I guess on one hand, I've already developed that muscle for being creative when any phone call or any change could be a terrible one, but
yeah. But I think it makes sense, because like creatives tend to be control freaks about our art, and like weirdly, you know, we're good at seeking out moments of control. And so anytime we can create that illusion of control, I think getting to exercise control over our work when we can't exercise control over the world is something that comes kind of naturally, because we're used to like disappearing into this momentary control. Well, so to kick things off, basically, for anyone who's not already familiar with your work and your path, I was hoping you could just give us basically a brief origin story. How did we get here? How did you how did you get from A to Z?
Oh, wow. Gosh, the funny version is I quit grad school because I hated it, and I had everything except for the actual degree. I finished all of my classes and everything. The only thing I didn't do was actually defend my thesis. And I decided it would be better to write something that I believed in, that I thought would really change the world. And so I gave myself 5 years to be published, like have everything in my life be focused on that, including like I wouldn't have to worry about another kind of career as long as I had work that, you know, put food on the table. It didn't have to be anything I liked. And I really started focusing on trying to find that balance between something that I was excited to write and something that I thought could sell as a career foundation kind of book. And I naturally gravitated toward YA because that's really what I was reading. This was like 2007, 2008. So it was really the beginning of the YA bubble, like just post Twilight, really rocketing everything up. And so YA was where it was exciting to be. And I got really mercenary about finding an agent. I wrote a book, revised it, sent it to like 12 agents, and got really good responses, but nobody wanted to represent it. So instead of sending it to more agents, I scrapped that book and I wrote another book and I revised it and I sent that to 12 agents.
You were diligent about this.
I knew what I wanted. I knew the kind of agent I wanted to be a partner for my career, and that I could always the hope was finding the right agent and starting a career. And if I needed to resurrect one of these books, I could. Like my real focus wasn't on the book itself, but a book as a foundation. And I did that twice. I went through that process twice. And then when I wrote the book that would eventually become my debut novel, I only sent it to one agent. You know, I'd narrowed it down over these years. And so I just sent it to her and I was like, this is going to be it. And about 5 really, really stressed out weeks later, she emailed me and said that she loved it and wanted to be my agent. And that was in January of 2009. Wow. And she's still my agent. So it worked.
I mean, clearly, it worked. You were doing short stories as well, right?
Yes. Yeah, I had a short story blog with a couple of other writers. And we were really practicing like craft on a small basis there. And it was like, it really, really helped to write almost like throwaway short stories them on the internet. And so it gave me freedom in a way that working on a novel doesn't, where I could experiment. And if I didn't get it quite right, it didn't really matter. I still had to put it on the internet. And then I could forget about it and move on. And you know, you never get to let go of a novel, even if it's out for 10 years.
Well, and it's like you get to kind of flex creative muscles. And I bring up the short stories because I feel like you do a slight disservice to yourself when you talk about these kind of first mercenary attempts. Because even though it's Blood Magic is the first one, right? Like the first publisher. Even though Blood Magic is, you know, is the third thing there, you're doing other things along the way, which are rebuilding your craft. And I am all for the mercenariness of publishing. And I think something I try and bring up a lot on these weird little videos is that, you know, there's art and there's business, and publishing is the conflation of the two. And it can be really fun to talk in precious terms about only writing from your heart and only, you know, speaking to that. But like at the end of the day, you also have to have an understanding of the industry that you, and what basically you have to have an understanding of what your goals are as an author. And it's not a bad thing to have a vision for what you want your career to be like.
Absolutely. I think it can be one of the most helpful things, actually. And it has helped me both when I'm setting goals and also when things go very, very wrong. And I know you've experienced some of that, like when, you know, a book doesn't do well by any standards.
Be they arbitrary or realistic.
Right. Or, you know, something gets canceled or you don't get to finish a series. And the real like crushing weight of that, there was almost nothing on the artistic side of writing that helped me through that. But some of the business things, like when I would go out and I would be like, okay, who are authors that I love who are publishing, you know, they've been publishing for 30 years. And then I looked back at their careers and how many times they changed their name or how many of their series were unfinished and they were still there writing books that were inspiring me. And so it was really looking at the career as a whole was the only thing that kept me writing after my second series was canceled.
Well, and I think so often, especially with YA, you know, there's this fetishizing of the moment of like this big one title, and it creates this illusion that for YA authors, your whole career will be made or broken by a single book. And the fact is, for the vast majority of us, our work is a body of work, not a single work. And it's hard because those aren't the stories that necessarily are always on the surface or always at the fore of the narrative. We love to talk about, you know, the thing that becomes instantly large, and we don't talk about the fact that, like, I remember learning that Elizabeth Wine, that Codename Verity was not her debut novel. That it was like her 6th or 7th book, and nobody talked about it. And I kept being like, can you imagine as an author how much more comforting it would be to know that up front than to fetishize it and turn it into this like debut moment? Because what happens then is, if you don't know better, if you don't do the due diligence to go and do that research and learn how many authors you love have written books which have become big and books that have not. And it's persistence, you know, it's stubbornness that keeps you going. It might be luck and talent and timing that gets you in the door, but it's stubbornness that keeps you in the room. You know?
For sure.
So I want to know, so you've written short stories, you've written YA, you've written adults, and not just across the chasms of so-called audience, but across chasms of length, shape, form. Queens of Innisfree is a beast of a book. It's beautiful and massive, and then you've got the slightness of short stories. And I'm curious about your creative process, because kind of the whole impetus for this chat series is this idea that there's no right way to write. And this came about because I was fighting with so many of my friends who were like, well, I don't know what happens in the end. And I was like, well, you're a monster. But, you know, maybe somebody else out there feels that way. So I'd love to just know, for my own sake, as well as everyone here, like, what does your process look like? How do you get from idea to the end?
It is usually, for novels, it's a years long process. I think about my novels for years before I start working on them. I think I can honestly say, if you include like sequels in with how long I thought about the first book, there's not a single one of my published novels that I haven't been thinking about for at least 3 years, but up to 10 or 12 years sometimes. The first time I thought about how I would rewrite King Lear was when I was a senior in high school. And so, I mean, there were long spans of time where I stopped thinking about writing King Lear for myself. But, you know, that kernel had been there, and on a certain level, it never left my, like, the creative spaces of my mind. But one of the reasons I love writing short stories And any opportunity I get to write a short story, I want to take because it feels so different. Even if I use the short story to play with an idea I've been thinking of for a long time, or something that I know is a tie-in to one of my novels, but nobody probably can tell from the outside. They feel more like getting to sample places I could go, or flex muscles that I'm not sure I know how to use with a novel, with a full-length novel. And that's really the first place that I start, is when I have an idea, I write it down somewhere and I automatically file it into a short story file or a novel file.
Okay.
And I almost always have a gut sense about that.
Yeah.
And in the long run, it doesn't always stay the same. And, many of my short stories I have developed or will develop into novels, but I always have that gut feeling of, is this an idea or is this a story? And for me, the ideas can become a short story and the stories can become a novel.
I love that though, because basically you're stress testing the short story format before you have the commitment of a longer format. And as you say, you can always move from short story to novel. The short story can always be a launching pad for a novel. But I think that's a really smart way. I dread short stories, and I'm just starting to learn to like them because my brain automatically goes to novel. I think oh God, they're just fundamentally different beasts, but I'm beginning to embrace them as a place in which to play, because like you and somebody in the comments pointed this out, I have this 6-burner stove theory, which is this for me creatively, I have maybe 5 to 6 ideas going at any one time on very low heat on my mental stove. And then I'm actively cooking one thing, but the other things are always on low heat. And so I find that a short story is a nice ideal place to play with that low heat burner. But it sounds like kind of what you've got going with these very long gestation periods.
Yes. And I also think of short stories as really places where I can hone craft or try things. I've written short stories where I'm can I write a good short story with no dialogue? Or can I write a good short story that's all dialogue?
Yeah.
That kind of stuff, just to when I feel like I'm having a weakness in what I'm trying to do with a novel. Or it's usually what I'm trying to do with a novel, because at the end of the day, I do think I'm a novelist. And if I could only write one or the other forever, I would pick novels.
Yeah.
And so in a certain way, my short stories are always kind of serving that purpose. And
but I love that. They're surveys. They're surveys. You're testing a space. I think that's also brilliant, because if you don't move further, you've done this immense creative exercise. And I feel like one of the best ways to grow as an author is to constantly be doing those creative exercising and asking yourself, can I grow in this direction? We think of growth as just purely upward, but it's not just that. Can I write in second person? Can I, do something that challenges me and unlocks a piece of my brain? So you've got an idea, it's ready to be a novel. How much do you know about it? Do you know the ending?
When I start writing, I have to know at minimum the emotional climax of the protagonist or protagonists and how I want the last page to feel. I don't necessarily need to know exactly what it looks like, but if I don't have that to reach for, then I feel like, what am I even doing here?
I'm nodding furiously. I'm the exact same way. But for me, it's mostly to it's in part to reach, but it's also to keep me from quitting. Yes. If I don't know what I'm going for, I will get so disheartened around the 1/3 to 2/3 marks that I'll just be like, well, fuck this. I clearly had no idea. And I don't particularly love deleting entire books, though that is a thing I feel like we both have either done at some point. But so you need to know that emotional climax. You need to know what the last taste in your mouth is. And then do you write in order?
I do write in order, because I have a hard time keeping the threads of emotional tension clear if I try and write out of order. I also do a lot of revising. I consider myself more of a reviser than a writer.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times I can't really see what I'm doing until I have all that material there. But yeah, no, but that's
here's what I want to know, because you know, so here's my question, because I have like a dichotomous reaction to this. Because you know that you're a reviser, does it make it easier for you to be imperfect in the first draft, or is it still difficult?
If I know I'm doing something wrong, I stop doing it.
Same. So, I cannot put something down unless I can't move forward unless I'm happy with something that I have.
Me too. Sometimes I get the sense that I've just written a scene that I'm going to change eventually. But if I know how to change it already, I'm going to change it. And I end up rewriting the first third of my books way more than the last third of my books, because as I get into the middle and figure out how to make the middle not a mess, I end up starting over from the beginning over and over and over.
I know that first third is a beast.
Yeah. Well, where to start it? Oh no, maybe that wasn't the inciting incident. Are there 4 inciting incidents?
Also, if you're world building in any way, you have to get the kind of the structure of your world building. You can't be dropping things in the last third that you didn't establish. So there's like so much, you can't info dump, but we need to start becoming emotionally attached to our character. Like there's just so much work. I spend 5 times as much time on the first 100 pages as the rest of the book.
Yeah.
Same. And I know I'm a complete rewriter and a reviser. It has never stopped. Like I've never felt capable of just like putting shit down on paper and getting a 0 draft. Even if I know I'm going to revise it, if I don't like the writing and I don't like what I'm putting down on paper, I can't move forward.
Yeah, me too.
It's like worst catch-22. So as we're speaking of challenges, like what do you feel is your greatest strength? Writers hate answering this question usually because we're great at talking about weaknesses. Tell me about your strengths.
I think the reason I have a hard time with this question is actually superstition.
Okay.
Because I feel like by saying I think I nail emotional climaxes means that this book I'm currently trying to write, I'm not going to nail the emotional.
So let's phrase it differently. What is the thing that you look forward to when in the creative process?
I actually like most parts of writing a book. It's the I really, when I know a book is ready to be written, I usually have a few lines of dialogue or a couple of scenes that I know are going to be in that book. I might not know where they go. I might not know exactly how they work, but the process of excavating the book for those scenes, and then when I get to that scene and I actually get to type down this line of dialogue that I've been hearing in my head for a year or 5 years or who knows how long, that is probably my number one favorite part. But I also really enjoy the difficulties of figuring out like an argument or conflict, like any conflict between characters. It's so satisfying even while it's so frustrating. And I think it wouldn't be satisfying if it wasn't frustrating. So I think those are the things, I like those things the most. And I also think that leads to why I, at least, am usually so happy with the emotional climaxes of is because boy did I work to get to that.
Well, now Zoraida in the comments has pointed out that you are excellent at everything, and so my counter question here, while I believe it, is like, what do you feel is your kryptonite? What do you feel is the thing that gives you the most trouble, either craft trouble or psychological trouble? Like for me, it's the first draft only because I'm painfully aware of imperfections and I know I have to get it down to make it better. But like, do you have a like my kryptonite used to be plot. It's not my strength. And so I have to work 5 times as hard at plot because it's not my natural beef. What's your kryptonite?
I used to think it was plot also, mostly because I didn't care about plot, which is a problem. Like, because if you don't care about it, then you don't devote time to it. But I think that it isn't actually, that's not actually plot that is my kryptonite. It's communicating where I want readers to be looking. I think I tend to write about so many things on a page that I forget that I'm trying to communicate to readers. And so I think sometimes a reader might be like, am I supposed to be caring about the dialogue here or this character or the description? Like what do I care about in this chapter?
You have a hierarchic.
Yeah. And I think that's a real problem with communicating what I'm trying to communicate in the story. And I hope I'm getting better at it.
I don't know. I feel like you're pretty good at it, but it's like that hierarchy of needs on the page is really difficult, especially when you're a writer that's as complex as you are in terms of overlapping all of the threads in your story and all of those different arcs and those narratives. It can be really hard to prioritize it on a page by page level, especially because, like, you know, we are trying to create something vaguely linear out of something that's very spherical, right? So to us, it's like a complete ball of yarn, and to everyone else, it's going to be read one direction. And it can be, I think it's that classic struggle of like what every editor phrases as like getting it on paper, meaning you as the author are the closest person to the narrative, and every now and then, like, we are able to create clarity in our minds and like assume clarity on the page, when it can be difficult when readers are not coming to it with the wealth of story Bible and the background story and of all of the late night ponderances that come into the narrative. So that's fascinating.
Do I get to ask you a question?
You can if you want to. This is my interview series.
Well, do you think that working in so many different formats has helped you like clarify that, like how to bring something to the fore in a particular format?
I'm not sure if the multiplicity of formats has helped, or if simply like the experience in each format has helped. Because I feel like each time I try a new format, I have to learn a new language. And so I'm not sure that it's like, I'm not sure in some ways, like from a plot perspective, absolutely. Like from a plot perspective, TV writing is absolutely clarifying my novel plot structure. Like, but because I'm finding that it just taps into a different part of my brain. And so when I'm writing for TV now, like for pilots and scripts, I find that I'm thinking of like, I structure the scene in a slightly different way that's more plot forward. And then I can, so like I was stuck on a book and I couldn't figure out what I wanted the first 50 pages to like, and so to look like. And so I wrote it as a TV pilot, and it immediately opened up the plot forwardness of those first 50 pages. So sometimes they create exercises which help. But I think that the rest of the time, it's simply like, much like you found short stories as an opportunity to play in craft challenges, I find format and structure to be an opportunity to play in craft challenges. So like, I find it each one to just be a bit of an education. And then I think it makes me more flexible, because I'm like, well, I know this didn't work in short story form very well, but it worked really well in comics. So what can I take from each of these formats and like almost figure out how to make my novels the best version of themselves? Well, also, I don't know. I'm becoming an ornery old hag who like used to feel like my first opening 50 to 100 pages are slow. And for 15 books, I felt intensely guilty about this fact. And I don't feel guilty about it anymore, because they're slow because I'm putting all the chess pieces on the board so that by the time the game is over, you give a shit. And if I don't spend the time to like set up the game and put the pieces on the board, then you won't really care when it's over. And so I used to like I'm learning the difference between criticism and just perspective. If that makes sense. Like I'm learning the more I write and the more forms I write, I'm just learning what I'm trying to do and like sticking with what I'm trying to do. So you got to ask me a question. That's all you get to ask, because this is my interview show that I don't understand how to do. So what I want to ask about is, you've got these two, like you've written now you haven't written middle grade, have you?
No.
So you've written YA and adult.
Mm-hmm.
And like, as I said, YA and like very hefty adult. So first of all, how did you come into, like, did you always know you wanted to write? You came naturally to the YA space during like the boom years.
Mm-hmm.
But you also said that you like lived with this King Lear idea, and you obviously have like more of a classics background. So like, did you always know that you wanted that to be adult?
I think that I didn't. Originally, when I was first thinking about it, it was always adult because when I was 18, I only read adult speculative and like women's fic. That's all I read when I was a teenager and like in my early 20s. I started reading young adult when I was in grad school, and I got so obsessed with it as a reader and then a writer that when I actually sat down to start writing the Queens of Innis Lear, I did start writing it as a YA, and it became, and it wasn't because it was just my habit. Like I write YA, I'm a YA writer.
Yeah.
I love the dynamism and energy of YA. And I started writing this book and I was just like, this isn't working. It's fine. Like I had a whole draft that could have been a YA fantasy and it was fine. But it just wasn't what I wanted it to be.
It wasn't its prime incarnation.
Exactly. And what actually ended up happening is I started writing it in the years after my Asgard series was canceled. And I didn't sell anything for about 3 years. And I had the Queens of Innis Lear draft. And then I also had the draft of a book that I just called Slaughter.
I love it.
Right. Like
I love it.
Eventually would become Strange Grace.
Which is extraordinary. I love that book so much.
Thank you. That one was so obviously YA.
Yeah.
And through my own like flailing about my career and then talking with my agent, it occurred to me that while Strange Grace was definitely a YA book, the Queens of Innis Lear might not be a YA book. And I could maybe use it to go back to the genre of my childhood. It's very funny to say that YA was a genre of my adulthood.
Oh, it's the same for me.
And yeah, when I was like 10 years old, I discovered, Anne Rice and Robin McKinley and Michael Crichton. And I mean, Robin McKinley is very frequently considered YA now, but it wasn't the same genre then. But so adult SFF was the genre of my actual teen years and childhood. And so once I had the idea to go back to that, the book just sort of blossomed and became so much more. And I knew, even though it was going to be really difficult to write, that's what it had to be. So
it's funny though, because I don't know if I find some, like, half the time I start with an idea and I know exactly what it's going to be. Like, I'm like, this is YA, this is middle grade, this is adult. Every now and then I get stuck in this purgatory of it could be. Like, you can see a version of it, like, that is 1, 2, or 3. And then it becomes a matter of what is the best version of it? Like, what is the story you're actually trying to tell? And what does that mean? And where should it be? Like, because it's funny that's for Queens of Innis Lear, that there was a version of it that could have been YA. The same happened for Vicious, which was my first adult novel. There was a version of it that could have been YA. And it was a very confusing time for me because I was like, but it's not. Like, even before I had written it, I was like, it's not. And they were like, oh, but there are teenage characters there. And I'm like, but it's not. Like, thematically, it's not its best self as that. That's the things that they're going through are not that. And it's so hard. I'm dealing with that with a book right now that I'm writing that I sold as YA, and I'm not sure it's YA, but I also am not sure it's middle grade or adult. And so I'm having that moment of like, I mean, I could make it YA, and I love YA, and I've written YA, but I kind of think it's actually the kind of middle grade that parades as adult, like Girl Who Drank the Moon or Uprooted, where you're like, what is it? Does it matter? And so I'm going through this where for the last several years, I've known very concretely what my books are. I've always known, like, as they've come to me, what they were trying to be. And now I'm like, well, shit, I have this amorphous child again. And it's been a little while since I had to deal with the fact that it's going to be on me to turn the yarn into the page and figure out, and nobody else will ever know. Like, nobody will have gotten to read it in the form I don't choose. So it's just going to be on me.
Yeah. And then people say, I'm also writing a book right now that it could be, like, I could make it YA or adult.
Yeah.
And I genuinely can't tell if it would be better in one or the other. Yeah. And so it's like, well, maybe I'll have a breakout crossover novel. That'd be great.
I mean, you know,
but you can't write to that. Yeah. And that's the problem. And trying to be like, well, let me just let go of, is it YA or is it adult, and write the book as it's like meant to be. Yeah. That's not real.
It's not real, especially in traditional publishing. It's hard. You always, like, it's really easy for readers and self-publishing a little bit more flexible for people to be like, just write what you want to write. And it's like, but we are still painfully aware of the fact that there are shelves and categories, and like publishers tend to like, when stories have an identity, because it's easier for them to sell them.
Yes.
You can't be like, it's this, but also this, but also this. And they're like, what is the metadata?
And I would like my books to sell. So I don't want to move farther away from that.
It's hard. It's hard. And I do feel like, compared to where we started, because we're roughly the same generation in terms of writing. You started about, like, publishing wise, about 2 years before me.
We were in our 11sies together.
Oh, that's true. That's true. But you had Mary Sisters before that.
Right. But my novel, Blood Magic and Near
was 2011. Yeah, which is crazy. Oh, 11sies. Oh. Not enough whiskey in the world for anyone who doesn't know. When you're a debut, I try to bring a little bit of truth here. When you're a debut novelist, you tend to join what's called a debut support group, and it's specific to your year. And so both of us were in a year called the 11sies, which was the 2011 debuts. And like any support group with roughly 200 debut authors in it, it was a cataclysmically bad idea. Like, just a terrible for everyone, for mental health, it just becomes it's like the Hunger Games. It just becomes a terrible battleground where everyone's convinced that only the fit will win. And so, it's a lot. It's a lot. But I think in our generation, things felt a lot more codified. Like, YA is this, adult is this, middle grade is this. And I do feel like we're entering a slightly more fluid definitional time. Making up words now, but like a time wherein you can experiment a little bit more, but you're still pushing against brand expectation and publisher. And it's very hard to just be like, I'm going to let the art take me where the art will, and my readers will be there. And you're like,
that hasn't been the case in the past.
It doesn't work that way. Especially in YA. I do feel like the adult genre space will let you play a little bit more fluidly. YA still has quite codified ideas of itself. But yeah, it's so interesting to me that these boundaries, because there is this sense that we always know what we're writing while we're writing it, and writing is such a process of discovery that you never really know.
No.
Now, I want to, before I go to my most important question, which is also my hardest question, just be warned. I want to know about, I want to get, like, just chat so that people can hear about both your most recent adult book and your upcoming YA.
Yes.
So now you can your pitch.
My most recent adult book was Lady Hotspur, and it is a companion novel to The Queens of Innis Lear, but it takes place about 100 years later. So while reading both of them, I think, makes both of them better, it's not necessary. And it is a gender-bent, queer retelling of everyone's favorite Shakespeare play, Henry IV, Part 1.
I love it.
But it's got lady knights and prophecies and
all that good stuff.
Lots of politics and relationship angst. And it's really about trying to carve positive queer space in patriarchy, basically, in a patriarchal power. Find a place for joyful queer space is really the right thing. So that's what that book is about.
I love that so much, because especially when we create space for queer characters in classic and retelling spaces, it tends to be tragic.
Exactly, because that's the space that was there and the easiest way in. But I mean, I have seen some reviews where people were like, this isn't historical. And I, thought I was going to learn so much about, England and
you're like, hi, I is not nonfiction.
Right.
I is not your nonfiction. Also, like,
I wish the trees could talk, but
also there's just so much space for, like, right now that we're seeing, there's so much just warped retelling. Like, I mean, I just watched Hollywood. That whole thing is just
I'd love to see that. Yeah.
I mean, I probably, like, it's pretty campy, but I found it goddamn delightful. But, like, one of the things I found it so delightful about was that they basically were like, history. This is what we would have liked history to have been a bit more like. And I think, like, God, if we need any kind of retelling, we need a retelling that creates more positive space for marginalized. Yeah. Like,
I think so.
Like, it's great to acknowledge history, but, like, fiction is a beautiful place to rewrite it, because rewriting itself is aspirational.
Yeah, I agree completely. Yeah.
Also, if anybody needs to get their nerd on with Henry IV Part 1 and Part 2, BBC did the Hollow Crown series featuring Tom Hiddleston pre-Taylor Swift side sojourn, and it is delightful. So if you feel like you need to get your nerd on, or you're thinking Henry IV Part 1 is very specific, it was very, very sexy time.
Right. It is good, but it's not quite as good as the For King and Country version that came out the year before the Hollow Crown.
Oh yeah.
And has and it hurts me to say this, but an even better Hal and the best Falstaff I've ever seen. So that's actually the one I recommend most. But Hotspur and Lady Kate in the Hollow Crown are, in my opinion, superior to the King and Country.
Okay, wait. So it's For King and Country?
Yes.
Okay, it was. I never watched that one because I was a deep Hiddleston person at the time.
It's the Globe. It's just like the David Tennant Hamlet.
Yeah.
It's filmed in yeah. Okay. So it's very, very good.
If anyone here hasn't watched the David Tennant Hamlet, I mean, I am very gay, and that just gives, it's just still like something about David Tennant, and especially his Hamlet, just
that's my preferred Hamlet. And Patrick Stewart is Claudius, and he's the best I've ever seen. So
wait, and tell us about the YA.
Okay. Night Shine is my next YA. It comes out on September 8th. It is a dark, queer Howl's Moving Castle. Not a retelling, because that does not need to be retold again. And it's about an orphan who grows up in the Empress's palace as the best friend of the prince. And one day the prince goes missing, and this orphan goes on a quest through demon-infested rainforests to the mountain where the sorceress who eats girls has kidnapped the prince. So it's a dark fairy tale.
So here's the thing. It's called Nightfire?
Night Shine.
Night Shine. Sorry, my brain. I'm like 2 whiskeys in. And I was looking it up because someone asked what it was called. Okay, so here's my thing. Every writer hates being asked, where do your ideas come from? But I do specifically want to know, like, what were the seeds for that? Like, what were the initial sparks that would then go on to become Nightshine?
I feel really, really bad about this, but I actually don't remember. I have a short story file that I mentioned earlier, and this the first line of the book is "Nothing killed the prince," and that line has been in my short story file for a really long time, and nothing is what the orphan goes by. It's sort of her name. And so I just had this line, and I always knew that was the name of this girl. And I don't remember where I came up with that. It's at least from 2011 or something. And then I was looking through, all of my idea files in 2018 because I needed something to work on that I wasn't going to stress out about when I was in the hospital with my mom. And this idea wasn't connected to anything that I'd been thinking about in a couple of years. And so it was like this pure kernel of, oh, I can develop this outside of everything else that's stressing me out. And so I just sat with it and started pulling things I liked, only things I liked. Like, so if something was like, oh, I'm not sure I want to put that in, I was like, I'm not going to put it in. And I just started throwing my favorite kinds of tropes and my favorite kinds of archetypes into this, and then making sure everyone was queer. And the main 4 characters, 3 of them are my favorite, like, dark, wicked love interest archetypes. And then the 4th one is the, put upon bodyguard, who's my other favorite archetype.
Yeah, I would say one of my favorite archetypes.
The greatest. But so I really was just giving myself freedom to find a story to bring these kinds of wicked characters and make them at least protagonists, if not heroes.
Also, it sounds amazing. Like, amazing. Also, killer first line, literally. Like, what a wonderful first line. Anything I think that can twist, kind of tip your expectations to the side. Because even if nothing was just nothing, it would still be a beautiful line. And then when you start to learn, like, I think that you have such a special gift when it comes to actual prose as well as world building. Like, I love storytelling. But I'm a picky bitch who hates most things. And I think the thing that gets it for me, the thing that takes a story to the next level, is not only when the conflict and the tension in the world are there and the characters, but when it's written in such a way that I just feel like I'm devouring poetry. And I feel like I get that with your books again and again. And that makes me so, so excited for Nightshine.
Well, thank you.
I'm going to ask you the worst question now.
Okay.
I love asking this question because it's a little mean. Okay.
I'm going to have a drink first.
Yeah, have a drink. Prepare yourself. So, I was at a convention. Everyone who listens to this every week has to hear this story every week. So I'm sorry, but I was at a convention. I was talking with an actor. He is currently the lead on The Expanse, Stephen Strait. But he was talking about the fact that everyone who was coming to see him at the convention, the majority of them, were coming to see him for a role that he played in the Disney movie Sky High when he was a teenager. Okay? And it got into this long discussion.
I didn't know that was the same guy.
I know. He was the fire starter, bad boy at Sky High. Anyway, I know. But we got into this really deep intellectual discussion over, like, vegan grains in the green room. Because it was a weird ass convention about, like, how as creatives, you'll never get to pick what you're known for. Like, you just won't. Like, you will put piece of art after piece of art after piece of art into the world, and you don't get to pick which one is how it's received. You don't get to pick which one, which one sells best. You don't get to pick any of it. So if you could choose which of your novels, and you can only pick one to outlive you, which would it be? And it can be, it's a slight cop-out, but it can be one that you haven't written yet, if you feel like it's still ahead of you. But if you've written one that you want, especially, it's also a way to tell viewers and readers, like, if there was to be one of yours that you felt had something that if you could only pick one to outlive you, what would it be?
Well, I do hope that I haven't written that yet.
Yeah.
Because if I thought for sure that I had already written it, I'm not sure what the point would be in continuing to write.
Yeah.
But of the books.
Yeah, of the books. Now that you've given your true heart's answer, which is that you must dream to keep going.
Yes.
Of the ones you've written,
I would say Lady Hotspur, because what I was trying to do was show different ways that queer people can find joy and make space for themselves and claim power. And it's in this really complicated patriarchal system, and like there's arguments about whether it should be burned down and how likely it is that that's possible. But then on like individual levels, I think that's what I would like to leave behind, is that it's a fight worth fighting, to make space to love and let your love, like choosing how you're going to love can change the landscape of the world. And so that's what I would like to leave behind. Yeah. And that's what I was trying to talk about in Lady Hotspur. So, you know, maybe I did that.
I am so excited to read it. I've been holding it because they're like, it's a big book. It's a big, beautiful book. Yeah. And I've been holding it till after I beat a deadline, but I can't wait. And I honestly, like, you are a joy to talk to and a joy to read. And thank you so much for doing this interview with me.
Oh, thank you for having me. Yeah, I really appreciate it.
Absolute blast. And now everyone is going to go read Queens of Innislear and Lady Hotspur and pre-order Nightshine. I can't wait. I can't wait to see what you do next.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Have a great rest of your day. And thank you to everybody who tuned in. Have a great day.